Hey there folks, Jumpesque here bringing another audio commentary. Today I'm actually doing an Undead Mirror between Hopestar and Space, and I've casted something like 70 games now, and this is my first ever Undead Mirror, for a couple reasons really. For one thing, I think they're a bit luck dependent, and I think that's what sort of lots of the Undead pros believe as well, but also there aren't very many Undead players who I'll actively try and watch their games. Certainly Space is one of them. And so I thought I'd just try and cast one of these games. They tend to be quite action packed, depending on what heroes we see. And we are seeing from Hopestar now. Actually, he's going for a late altar, early crypt, which means he's probably going to be going for a ghoul build. Meanwhile, Space is I'm not sure here, but I think we're seeing an earlier altar build, and so I think we're probably going to be seeing fiends from Space, which is a bit different. And really, that's probably one of the more interesting early game matchups for Undead Mirror. Obviously, you can have Lich Ghouls, which is pretty exciting. Death Knight Fiends. If you have Death Knight Fiends Mirror, that's tremendously boring. But a mixture of the two is certainly okay. And what this game might come down to is whether or not Hopestar can actually manage to get some Novas off and get off on those Fiends and get those surrounds and kills. Because really, that's what it comes down to. You have to kill off those Fiends as soon as they come out. Otherwise, sort of Space will be able to build up a critical mass. I assume at least we're going to see Fiends. He's probably going to put up a graveyard pretty soon, but we'll have to see what his exact strategy is going to be. Obviously, he's building a couple of goals first, and Hopestar is now scouting out with this one Acolyte, and Space is doing the exact same thing. Obviously, having extra Acolytes is really important for both sides, especially for Space, considering he's likely to be harassed a fair bit. And yes, we are now seeing a graveyard from Space, so we'll be seeing late Fiends. Obviously, he'll be sending off his Death Knight just to harass a bit first, and obviously to try and steal some creeps with coils and stuff. And you probably should set up a tower as well. Obviously, there's just so much potential for harassing with Lich Ghouls, and if you can take out a couple of those Acolytes, that can be really dangerous, and that could really cause Space some problems. And Space should probably bring this Acolyte back to his base as soon as he's worked out where exactly Hopestar is actually going to be creeping out. And Hopestar obviously is a bit of a later Lich, and so this Space will actually have his Death Knight there in time just to manage to start stealing, or at least trying to steal those creeps. And so Hopestar might decide just to attack the Death Knight, try and force him away. And Hopestar actually putting up a tower of his own, and no tower from Space yet. I'm a bit surprised by this. Perhaps we'll see one later. He only has one Ziggurat up at the moment, but perhaps when we see some more, we'll see a bit more. We'll see some more defensive play from Space, because you really do have to play defensively, because you can't stay at Ghouls or at tier 1 for long. You do have to get more than Fiends, and at that point, Hopestar will probably try and run in with his Ghouls. And actually, maybe he's going directly to Space's base. This would be quite a good move. Considering Space is actually already teching now, and Space is just putting up his second Ziggurat now, but he is upgrading a tower as well, and that's going to be so important. Obviously, the Nerubian tower will slow, but against so many units, it's actually going to have a relatively low effect in terms of the actual percentage DPS reduced, and so I think he might be better to go for a Spirit Tower instead. Maybe he'll put one of those up as well once his Ziggurat finishes, and you can see Space immediately, knowing he has to play defensively, trying to block off all the obvious entrances to his gold mine, and that's really what Hopestar's sort of priority is going to be just trying to kill off those Acolytes, and Hopestar has managed to get his Ghouls back there, and will now be trying, and actually he's brought up a couple of Skeletons as well. He probably will be using Nova on those Acolytes as well, and you can see Space just having to constantly run his Acolytes away, and meanwhile actually getting a surround there on that Lich. Very, very nicely played there by Space. Obviously, Space sort of not known for his micro, but certainly some very nice play there, and it looks like maybe Hopestar's just going to let his Lich die. It certainly wouldn't be unheard of. He does get one ghoul kill there, and he does let his Lich die, and I guess the reason he's done that is because he wants to continue this harass. He only had a level 1 Lich, so the experience isn't too much, and it's fast, and he couldn't really heal up his Lich anyways, so that was probably the best move by him. Actually, it's a pretty smart play there. He didn't panic and just use the TP, and Space now finally out with the Crypt Fiend, and you can just see the disadvantage of playing like this is you just have such lace Fiends, and you just take so much harassment as well. We can take a look later to see how much gold Space has actually lost in all this. He does manage to coil that one Acolyte as well, but hasn't had an Acolytes on the mine for a very long time now, and Space actually hitting level 2 now on his Death Knight. That aura is going to be so important. Obviously, it will allow those Acolytes to get away faster, and it looks like Hopestar is realizing he won't be able to do any more damage, and does run back with most of his units, but we can see Space is down to just 3 Acolytes, a couple more Skeletons here, but I doubt they'll get any more kills unless Space is really careless, and so that's some very nice harassment there by Hopestar. Obviously, we'll be considering, actually Space will just be rebuilding his Acolytes as soon as possible now, but we can see Space has, what, 11,000, 1,300 gold left compared to 10,600, so just so much harassment done there. The Lich is already back out. Obviously level 1 Lich comes back so quickly, but Space really needs to be able to continue to defend while he tries to actually capitalize on his slight hero advantage and a tech advantage as well. Actually, obviously Hopestar needed to tech a bit later. Hopestar obviously was still one acolyte spare as well, because I'm not sure if he was expecting a counter attack or something like that. Just obviously it's best just to have those units safe. And meanwhile, Space doing some very nice multitask creeping here, just tanking on a couple of ghouls who I assume he'll send back to Lumber as soon as possible, which means he can take some damage on it and then just put them back on Blight and they'll heal up pretty quickly. And Space probably get tech to tier 3. I'm not seeing a Slaughterhouse at this point, so we might see a fast tier 3 tech, and then maybe some just a quick push with some Destroyers, some Fiends, and then Lich and an Orb, and maybe a Dark Ranger. We'll have to see how things go. And meanwhile, I imagine Hopestar is now tier 2 and getting a Death Knight as well, and that Death Knight's going to be so important. Obviously, Hopestar is just going to be tanking now on his Lich a bit, because he knows he'll be able to heal up soon, and actually tanking a bit on ghouls as well, and he will have to send these ghouls back. But meanwhile, Space is coming right in here, still only with the one Fiend though. That could cost him a bit. He does have a second one coming in though, and he could be in a bit of trouble here if he tries to get a Creep Jack. Fortunately, Hopestar has taken a lot of damage, but Hopestar does have enough mana for pretty much two Novas at this point, so Space needs to be really careful not to lose these Fiends. He does coil one, and meanwhile Space actually bought this Berserker, and it looks like he will be trying to run it out. It does get Nova, but I think it should be able to get away with that aura, and yes, it looks like it will get away, and Space will continue to chase down this one ghoul, obviously trying to get that little bit more experience, and he is pretty close to level 3 now, so some pretty impressive play here by Space. And meanwhile, the Death Knight is now finally in play for Hopestar. He will want to use his coil as soon as possible, and actually uses it on that one ghoul, and instead of on the Lich, just to save its life, and lets it turn around and fight these Fiends. But meanwhile, Space doing a very nice job, actually managing to get a fair few kills, getting level 3 on his Death Knight as well. That's going to be so useful just in terms of those level 2 coils pretty much heal off by Crypt Fiend to full health from nothing. So it's going to be really dangerous for Hopestar to try and actually focus down any one unit. If you don't actually know who Hopestar is, he's not a tremendously well-known player. I believe he's Chinese, and I remember seeing him. He's beaten a couple sort of pretty good players, and he's beaten some Orc players as well. I think he beat Cash recently, who's obviously an Orc, and that's sort of the last time I can remember him playing. But certainly he's not a terrible player and shouldn't be underestimated. And meanwhile, he's coming right back into Space's base, and Space is putting up a Spirit Tower now, just as I was saying. And it looks like Space is going to lose that one Acolyte. It wasn't a spare one. He was sending it out to build this Slaughterhouse, and so he is down to 4 Acolytes again on his mind. So this is not going too well for Space. He does get this one Berserker called, and it does get focused down, and Space is going to need to run out his Acolytes again. And meanwhile, he's just managing to get back in with his army now, and this is really going to cause trouble for Space, just having so little economy. And as you can see, Hopestar actually having a very large number of skeletons will be trying to focus down the sort of individual acolytes, although obviously Space can coil them up. When he has level 2 coil, it's actually a bit annoying to have to waste the coil and just healing sort of 220 hit points or so. And Space does lose another acolyte there, and one of his Fiends is low, but does get called before Hopestar turns around to try and attack it. And it looks like this Death Knight will manage to get away pretty much unhindered, because I don't think Space has a Lich. No, Space hasn't even started building a Lich yet. I'm still only at 21 food actually, and so I imagine he'll be trying to make use of his Slaughterhouse as soon as possible, trying to get out a couple statues and maybe go for some early Destros. Meanwhile, Hopestar has actually been teching as well. His tech probably isn't too far behind Space's at this point. Actually, his tech's slightly ahead of Hopestar. That's pretty Spaces. That's pretty surprising. But and he does have a Shade out now as well. Obviously, he's just going to use this to scout, and if he is nearby and can get a Creep Jack, he's certainly going to go for it. But it looks like he's actually going to scout that this Creep Jack is incoming. Oh, maybe he's not going to scout it. He's Shade did sort of run by, but has now come back, and so he knows that he's been Creep Jacked, and so probably will try and minimize his losses here. And it looks like he'll try and get away. Actually, Space gets one Fiend ensnared, and he probably will have to call that back up. And unfortunately for him, or for Hopestar, the Creeps actually get some good positioning, block off a lot of those goals, and it looks like that one feed will finally go down though, but after having wasted a lot of the Creeps and Hopestar's time. And it looks like both sides will be sort of trying to keep back. Hopestar is now getting Ghoul Frenzy as well, and he has gone for a lot of ghouls. I'm not sure what much else he has. He does just have the 2 crypts at this point, and he is building a Slaughterhouse finally, but it looks like he's going to try and get an early advantage. He has now picked up a Dark Ranger as well, so it looks like he's just going to be playing sort of basically tier 1 with 3 heroes, and trying to get some easy Fiend kills, and then from that just managing to capitalize by building more statues, maybe a Destroyer or something like that. We'll have to see exactly what his game plan is, but certainly it's going very well for him so far. Space is just so far behind in economy. I think that he's really had trouble keeping up. Obviously he only has 1 hero, and Space has lost 1 Fiend there, and has another one slowed. Ghoul Frenzy is probably going to be finishing pretty soon, and that will allow Space, or Hopestar just to manage to really chase down these fiends, and there's really very little you can do at that point until you get some better units. And Space almost getting surrounded there on a couple units actually, and it looks like this one fiend might go down just because those ghouls are so powerful now, and level 4 now for that Death Knight though for Space, and so he will have a bit of aura which is going to help him, and he does get a very last second coil there on that one fiend, and that will help it keep it alive for a bit longer at least. Meanwhile, the Death Knight is chasing down one low ghoul, but looks like he gives up eventually. And Space is now tier 3, is getting a Lich finally, and probably will buy an orb as soon as possible. And meanwhile, Space in a bit of trouble here with his Death Knight, trying to run away, but doesn't quite manage to. Has a couple skeletons, which he's actually using to focus down that one Lich. And looks like Space decides that he's going to have to take the long way around. Actually summons a couple more skeletons just to put on that Lich, which is a bit weird because you think Hopestar will be able just to heal up with the Death Knight. Actually, Death Knight not enough mana for a coil at this point, and so we'll have to wait a bit of a while. But this Lich will should just be able to run back to the Blight, and then obviously he has a tower and a Black Citadel there, which will slow down those skeletons sufficiently.